What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Human Proof broadcast. Today is a very special day. We are with a very valuable member of the HPD community. His name is Marty. If you are a member, if you've been around, you've seen in any of the Facebook groups, you've probably seen Marty's face pop up here. And yeah, we're pretty excited for this conversation. We've had a good conversation before him coming on live here. So I know that there's lots of golden nuggets that we'll be sharing today. Marty, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Kelvin.
Yeah, absolutely. Marty, why don't we start off by you introducing yourself and letting the HPD community know who you are.
Right. So I do have a day job. I am an engineer by trade, but my ultimate goal is to have personal freedom and be my own boss, and that's what led me to entrepreneurship and affiliate sites. So I've been working on those for a little while now.
Where are you based out of?
My actual city is Alpharetta, so I'm close to Atlanta, Georgia, a little bit north of Atlanta.
Okay, cool. Actually, here's an interesting question. How did you come about finding HPD at all?
So to make a long story short, on and off over time, I've always wondered. I thought it was just impossible. I had this crazy notion about, gee, I wonder if it's possible to make money in a way other than a traditional job, where you're locked into a certain way of living every day, this same stupid routine. And I was just cruising the internet, and I found these websites of guys who doing their own thing and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and they were remote workers, which was cool. And I thought, well, that's really hard to come by. I'd have to learn a new programming language or something crazy like that. And I thought, why don't I try to find out about other ways? And that's what led me to e-commerce, online things like affiliate sites, and of course, found out about human proof designs that way.
Very
Just
cool.
kept searching for you guys, yeah.
Very cool. So how long have you been building affiliate websites for?
Okay, I do remember tinkering with it before I had any idea what I should or should not be doing. And I think as far back as maybe the end of 2015 or somewhere in 2016, and those didn't go too well. So it wasn't until June, I believe it was roughly last June of 2017, that I took an actual course, and then also got a lot more information from HPD, and that helped me get rolling with a good plan. So we're just a little bit under 2 years, I think, roughly.
What happened with those first sites that you built?
Yeah, I clearly remember that. So I picked a terribly competitive niche, and I had no idea about how to find keywords. And one of the common mistakes that absolute beginners make is to pick they think, gee, I need something that a lot of people are searching for, and they go after a keyword like that, and boy, that was a flop. So I started to make matters worse, one of the most competitive niches you can pick, which was men's health supplements. More of the fitness related end of things, and that just did not go well. I started a little site with a couple pages. I think I had 8 or 10 pages, and it just didn't do well at all. So before long, I realized I made a huge mistake, and I shut it down.
Okay, so you don't own that site anymore, then? It doesn't
not anymore. No, it's kind of pointless going to that one. I wanted to try over and start off on a better foot,
Yeah, definitely. So what kind of, so now that you shut down that site, it was too competitive, and now you've got these sites that you're working on now. How many sites do you have? And maybe we can talk a little bit about, the differences between the site that you started at the beginning, which didn't do well, and now the sites that you have now. How many do you have, and what's the difference in the niches, I guess?
Sure. So I currently have 2, which is plenty enough for me when I'm working on stuff in my free time. Believe me, when you're really working hard, you're going to find stuff to be doing, and 2 is plenty. Sometimes it's more than enough. So I have one main site which is making nearly all the money. It is a rather competitive niche, but when I started, I didn't know all the finer points of how to judge stuff like that. But it is working because I worked so hard on it and tried to take a different approach on my original site a long time ago. Second site is more something related to something that I know as a hobby, and I have I won't say expert level, but I have very advanced knowledge of. So it was a lot easier for me to get rolling, and it's about half the size of the first site. And they're different from my original site, as in their content is like worlds better. They look far more trustworthy. Their appearance is a lot more together, and they are also just little things here and there. But especially keywords I target are I take a far more careful approach now based on what I learned. You know, KGRs, especially mostly KGRs.
The KGR method, the keyword golden ratio, something that Doug Cunnington has branded there. Are you saying then that you only focus on KGR keywords?
I should clarify, not only, I was originally a member of Doug's course. So we start off with 10 posts that are, most of them are KGRs, not all were. So what I've learned over time is that in Doug himself and people like Dom don't ever try these others, higher volume that you're not thinking of originally. They never say that. They say if something comes along that's a good opportunity, it's worth a shot. So several keywords, I found that there was very little competition when I did I more carefully checked the search engine result page results, and several had been higher volume, let's say 300 a month, some higher than that. Some were buyer posts, some were not, some were info posts. And that's one of the best things I've ever gone after, because it turned out I'm number one in several keywords that are info posts and a few buyer keywords, and it's really paid off a lot. Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, I think that what's attractive about the KGR stuff is, especially for a new site, is you can gain traction a lot faster, and that's, I mean, it's rewarding, right? I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into building affiliate sites that you may not see the rewards from in months in advance, right? Whereas with the KGR, sometimes you can rank it in, like in like 24 hours. Actually, you could probably rank for some.
I've had some go up to number 1 through 3 in less than 24 hours, just overnight. By the time I went into work in the morning, some were already at the top. That just goes to show you, there's never any guarantee, but it increases your odds a lot, because you need all the benefits you can get. So, and you're definitely right that I always try to encourage other people to take the right approach if they're an absolute beginner, because I know how that feels, and I was in that position myself. So I just basically try to frame it so that they see it from the right perspective, that you're down here and you need your site to build up traffic to get up here if you want to make money. And this is a great way, using the keyword golden ratio as a general rule of thumb for starting off, to get your site rolling and build up momentum. That's what I like to call it. And if you'll do that, you get if you just get the wheel spinning, if you're doing things the right way, halfway decent, before long, you start seeing it go up and up and up. And it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's a steady climb. And once you get up there, it's going to be worth it. You'll be so glad that you did it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about affiliate sites and just, I mean, building web properties in general, I mean, it doesn't have to be just the affiliate site model, is that, there is a lot of front loading work that you're investing at the beginning, especially if you're relying on things like SEO, and then eventually that time decreases while your revenue actually rises on the other end. But it doesn't really mean that you should stop working at it. It just means that that's just how it goes. How much time are you spending on your sites right now?
I easily put in 20 plus hours a week at times. It's probably averages about something like that. One reason is because I write very high quality content, which has pros and cons I could talk about later on. But those easily take me some number of hours, especially because I do my own images, infographics, and sometimes I need to do the research if I really want to write a good post. I don't just put some crap in there and say, oh, this, that, and the other, and some fluff. I will go read about stuff and then write it, and that does add time to the process. So it's probably at least 75% time that I put into content, if not more sometimes.
75% is in the research?
Oh, I'm sorry. 75% of each week's work that I do of the time spent is 75-80 is content. The rest is little things, tweaks, maybe implementing something new that I learned about in podcast or an article, things like that, or fixing some little things that I say, hey, that should have been better. I need to go back and fix that. There's always something.
Sounds like you're a perfectionist in a way.
I guess I'm guilty of that. A lot of it, mostly, I try to be a lot more practical now. Like, don't worry about things that don't matter, as they say. It's a hard lesson, but a lot of stuff recently was just stuff that new things that I've learned, like copywriting, new call to action approaches, how to implement those, some other stuff, little stuff like that, that actually ideally will really benefit you. It's worth your time,
So what makes a good CTA in your opinion?
I was originally taught about one way to do text links. And I actually did a little bit of A/B testing for text links versus buttons. And I will say that I can't reach 100% conclusion for every case. But what was interesting was when I did that, at least on 2 posts, the text links got just a few percentage higher click rate, CTR. So I still mostly do, except for my tables at the moment, I do text links. I do it, and I'm not like bombarding a post. It's not peppered with them. It flows from the product information, nice images to the pros and cons, and then a little bitty conclusion to help be a selling point. And then it flows smoothly into a little affiliate link with some text about head up. Don't be afraid to, or be sure to go head over and check it out now on Amazon. Something to that effect, So. Yeah,
so no buttons,
like
just text.
I do have those in the tables because that's more of a space thing, and currently it's probably 95% text links. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
I actually realized that I forgot something, and hopefully people are still listening to this at the moment. And that's because we haven't talked about revenue. I mean, revenues should be something that something that we probably should have talked about at the beginning, so people know that we're talking to someone who's successful in building these sites. So, are you comfortable sharing any sort of revenue numbers?
Yeah, sure, of course, no problem. I'm pretty laid back about this stuff, except for my niche, the niches themselves. But so again, it's probably easily 90% coming from the main site, which has about 62 or 63 posts at the moment as of this month, beginning of February. And so both sites together, it's just a few dollars under $1,200 every month. So I came out of 2018 going back up after there seemed to be a little bit of a drop in traffic in general across the board. For some people have, but now at the same time, right before traffic started rising again, I also implemented some CRO stuff, some optimization, and if I closed out January looking better than before. Yeah.
So in 63 posts is actually, it's pretty good when you think about 63 posts divided. 1,200 divided by 63 posts. I think that's actually pretty good ROI in terms of the amount of posts that you've got there. How much of that is commercial content? How much of that is information content?
Okay. And just to be clear, so the smaller site, it seems like the demographics don't convert as well, so that's one reason it doesn't earn as much. But yeah, it's mostly the 63 or whatever posts plus a few from the other one site. But oh, I'm so sorry. I lost track. Can you ask me that one more time? Sorry about that.
Sure. No. Commercial content versus info content. What's the ratio?
I apologize. I had so many ideas in my head at the same time. So
we'll get them all.
That's all right. I think that right now that is higher than when I started. I think I've got it like 70-30. Yeah, that's probably about right. Originally, it was a little bit fewer buyer posts. One reason I have more than the ratio is different now is that for some posts, I started off with an original post, and I did a repurposing experiment. And I took this original post and targeted some other long tail keywords, and I created three, not copying, but created two, say one or two other additional posts for different long tail keywords. So that increased the number of buyer posts right away.
Oh, very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe could you give me an example of what you mean?
Yeah, actually, I made a diagram. I shared that in one or two Facebook groups some time back. But, so basically, I write a normal good buyer post, and what I'll do is, if I know that there's another long tail keyword that's not going to get cannibalized, well, at least to the best of my knowledge, by checking it in Google, their search results, to make sure they're not going to be treated the same way, because if they are, I won't do this. I'll find another long tail keyword, and it might not necessarily be high volume, but something that's worth going after that there's not a lot of competition for. And what I'll do is I'll take the original, I'll create the new images and tweak it for the new keyword, focus keyword, maybe change the secondary keywords in there to try to get the most out of it for SEO. I'll rewrite the text and change it as needed to apply to this topic, this slightly different topic. It's close enough that I can reuse some of the content or rewrite it so it's not duplicate content, but then I'll modify it as needed for the new keywords. The general information I put in there that, I call it the buyer's guide, just basic stuff people like to know. The images, the product, addressing the specifics about here's why this is a great idea for this problem you have, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I do that I've done it for 3 times for, it's not exactly spinning, but creating 3 posts from the original post. Most of the time I get at the most I get 2 out of that. Yeah, sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't.
That was going to be my question. How well does it work in terms of this?
But at least half the time it's turned out really well. If not, actually probably more like 60%. I had one of those actually last year. It was interesting learning experience too. I got a good lesson came out of that. I targeted one at college related stuff, and by the way, that's a modifier, long tail stuff that's worth looking into for people sometimes. Something, the best blah, blah, blah for college students, college dorms, whatever. Yeah, I wrote one for that. And that was the one I remember specifically that it's one of those funny things where it was very low competition. And I remember publishing it in the evening, and then the next morning it was already within the top 3. And then I got a lot of traffic. I got a bunch of earnings out of it. But unfortunately, when people, I guess, the college season is seasonal sometimes, and so it wasn't for long before the traffic went back down. But it's okay. It served a purpose, and I learned something from it, right? So it wasn't a waste.
No, definitely not at all.
Yeah, there's a more general, and I think that's maybe a better use of my time, is something that's less seasonal and isn't going to spike and fall quite as much. Yeah, those are still doing pretty good, most of those.
Okay. I think just a small backtrack would be that when you initially decide that this keyword that you'd like to take and split into different longer tail keywords,
yes,
you mentioned keyword cannibalization. So could you walk the audience through how you assess keyword cannibalization for those that don't know?
And I guess, as they say, some people, the expression goes, it's not always an exact science, but for the best, what I try to do is, I've learned a hard lesson is I might bring up this basic C keyword, like the best, let's say the best cat hammock. And I'll see how Google treats that. And and sometimes you need to go further than just the first 10. You need to go through a couple of through the next 20 and see what results come up. And then also try the long tails, the best cat hammocks for brown cats, for people for the elderly, for this, for that, and see how those are treated. And then I take these long tail ideas that I can base off the original post. They're like these little bitty low hanging fruit things in my list of potential keywords that a lot of people say, that's not worth doing. But I'll say, okay, maybe I can use that and repurpose this content for that. So I'll take that potential keyword, and I'll search for it and see what comes up. So between the main one, the first one, and the second one, usually I can see if they're going to be treated the same or confused, and I have a better understanding about will this work or not. So basically, if they're different enough that they're treated differently, then they're probably okay. But if they're too closely related, that Google's algorithms learn that to people they're nearly the same, then in that case that wouldn't be a good idea. Because I've
Okay.
had it happen for regular posts as well, just normal posts. I've had it happen for those too.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. No, that's. I think that's great clarification because you really walked through. I haven't actually thought about going past the second page before, but that's a very very good point. Especially because you only have to do it once, so you might as well just do yourself
I
a
mean, it's
favor.
worth. Yeah, exactly. It's worth spending 2 extra minutes to avoid wasting hours, right?
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about let's switch gears here and let's talk about how long did it take for you to start really seeing success in your site?
Okay. Uh, and I remember the first time, and again, the second site didn't exist back then, so it was just the main site. So for practical purposes, just pretend I mentioned the second one. So I think about it was about 6 months before I saw the first 19 cents. And when or no, actually, I'm sorry, about 7 months. And I remember I was thrilled when I got that. It would have been sooner. I have to explain that. It sounds like a long time in my case, but one of the reasons for that is because I made the big mistake of halting my progress with the site, and I was chasing, as they call them, shiny objects. I had shiny object syndrome, which I was playing with drop shipping ideas, at least two different things, and this and that and the other, which was a huge mistake because it cost me a lot of time. So it was roughly altogether within 6 months. I had progressed from a few cents to a handful of dollars, and then by the time it's like eight, just a little bit over eight, I had gotten to the hundreds. So within a year, it was at $500, and that was when I had the interview with Doug on YouTube. And what's funny was shortly after that, within 2 months, I hit 1,000, and it has peaked and dipped. It wasn't as steady back then as it is now. Yeah. And so I've been trying to hit my next goal. I've broken it into little reasonable goals.
Why do you think it wasn't steady?
Well, at the time, the site had lower. Both my main site had lower traffic. It had just reached that level, and what I've seen over time is there's a pattern where traffic isn't going to stay completely the same every month of the year, even if it's not a seasonal. Sorry, even if it's not a non-seasonal niche. If it's quote evergreen quote, it will have dips and peaks, and people's buying habits. You can never really 100% predict them. So in order to have it a more steady income, I need it to have a little bit higher. That way, if it dips, it still roughly maintains that same level. So I was like here before, and that was good, but now it's over here. So when it drops a little bit, it doesn't really drop as much. Yeah. So just the general traffic pattern basically is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Um, so was it? Did you say it was a year till it was 1,000?
Let's see. Uh, Yeah, that's about right. It's hard for me to remember perfectly because the 3 4 months I wasn't working on it because I see again I shouldn't have done that because it screwed up my whole memory of the journey to this point. I think that's about right, and that to the $500. I think that's roughly about right. In that niche though, it's harder because there's so much competition and there are lots of buyers for that niche, but getting to that point was not the easiest thing. Some people have done it in 3/4 at time, or even less. So it depends. It always depends. In my case, that one was harder. My second site for example, got as sandbox faster. My post went up mostly faster for a lot of reasons, especially number one being having a better idea what I was doing. So it's not always exactly the same.
Do you think it has to do with niche selection, or is there more to it than that?
That's definitely a big factor. Yeah, yeah. Because at the time when I started with my first site, I didn't realize what I was up against so much. I mean, we go through, I was in part of a course, so it helps you to make a decision for a niche. You try to evaluate it. But in retrospect, I look at it differently now. My perspective on it, there's more factors to look at that I am aware of now that I wasn't back then. To answer your question, yeah, I'm pretty sure because I have had posts move up and down, and the competition is definitely not being lazy. So I've had to try to tweak things and optimize things to keep in the top 10, or especially top 5, hopefully top 3.
What was so you mentioned that, yeah, if you're in a course, and yeah, I think that's actually the benefit of being in courses as well, as that you are forced, because there's a time frame and you got to keep up with everybody else and everything. But you mentioned that there's these other layers of niche selection that are in there.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, of course, some of the standard stuff is to think about, of course, the things, is it seasonal? Yes or no? That's something you can check in Google Trends. You need to always be aware of that. Are there enough buyers? The product price ranges. Let's see. It really helps a lot to invest some time and try to see what keyword opportunities are out there that you're going to be able to rank for. That's a huge thing right there. Because I have an older site that I was considering putting to good use, and I think I'm not going to, because I've seen that the niche is probably too hard, not enough, not a good choice. There's also, I think one of the biggest things is to use tools to help you evaluate the competition. So let's say you're an absolute beginner and you have a rough idea about what you should do. Let's say you're using the KGR method. You've got a couple of keyword ideas in your spreadsheet, and you say, okay, what if I want to try for this in this niche? What would I be dealing with? What would I be up against? So you can take that and use one of the Chrome extensions like SEO Quake, or the Ahrefs toolbar, or Mozbar, or one of those, and it'll show you the stats. If you just do a simple search in Google, you'll see the stats for the competition that you'd be trying to outrank. And right away, as long as you understand the basics of what you're looking at, then usually their help information will explain it to you. You may say, oh, you know what, this is pretty good. There's some other weaker competition that's ranking. I can probably do that. Or, wow, these guys are very H sites and their domain authority is way too high. The odds of me going up against them shouldn't do it. But I try to look at the big picture. I would go through several instances and try to go through some tool and look at try to go through a lot of it and go and spend a lot of time looking and seeing what keyword opportunities are out there in a potential niche, what kind of products how much they sell for typically, or is it worth it? Because you're going to be dealing with small commissions, and you're going to have to sell a lot of those, so they need to be a reasonable price in order to be worth your time. But especially the competition, you can do things like see how they're roughly just have an idea what their backlink profile is, versus you starting off just using KGRs and not having any backlinks. It can make a big difference. I guess that's some of the first things that come to mind.
Do you believe that you need to be passionate in a niche?
I've heard several opinions about this, and now that I have some experience behind it too, I will say, ultimately, I think having a niche be something that you really, really want and you're passionate about is nice, but it's not that important. If you have the mind that you say, I want to succeed more than I care about something that happens to be nice that I like. I think that's the most important thing, is your drive to succeed in general, as opposed to has to be this. Because if you do that, you're really cutting yourself off from some crazy other opportunities that you never would have thought of that will actually pay off really well if you only consider them. Oh gosh, I've got so many ideas in my head. I forgot what I was going to say. I also, I will. Oh yeah, I remember what it was. Actually, there's two things. Number one, what's interesting is I like learning anyway, but what I found out was once I actually got my site started and I got a little bit of traffic and I started learning about the product and writing good content, pretty good content that delivers value, I found out, wow, this is actually interesting that I'm learning this stuff because people who land on your site, they're looking for somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about. If you give enough information in a good enough way, you're going to be considered sort of like an authority, and it's a nice position to be in. Also, something very interesting that I found out along the way is that I've seen this in different venues, not just affiliate marketing, but it's the same principle regardless. That a lot of things that you could consider boring products or a boring niche, they're actually doing really well, and there's a lot of opportunities there. So you need to really try to think outside the box. Don't think of the first things that you say, oh, I would love to do this, or first things I think of are this, because more than likely a lot of other people have been doing had the same approach too, i.e. there's going to be a lot more competition for those. For example, I'll be out sometimes in a restaurant and I'll see a product over there. And I think, you know what, that is possibly a good idea. It looks, nobody would ever think about that. It could be something crazy like a nightstand. You never know. A restaurant, I've been outside eating on the patio, and I'll look up and I might see like some kind of appliance or some kind of electrical thing that people would buy for their home, and I'll take notes of that because, yeah, is it boring? Absolutely, but there's a market out there. There could be a market. I'll put it in my notes, and later on I can go look. I can go check it out.
I just had this when you mentioned that, because I mean I haven't started a site in quite a while, but I but I just remember thinking about, okay, well, yeah, like I assume that probably almost every person that listens to this podcast has some notes in their phone of just all these different products and all these different niches that they could possibly get themselves into, and it's hilarious to me.
So,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
But if you're not, then you should be doing that.
yeah, definitely.
Um, are you using social media on for your sites?
Not really. No, no. When I started it, well, my understanding was, oh, this is the thing you need to be doing. But I think that at the moment, I have to choose where to put my time very carefully because I have a very limited amount of free time. And I've learned that the 80-20 rule is super important. You should live by, you should almost live by that as far as earning money goes online. So for the time being, I'll put it off until later. But I actually was talking to a guy, Lance Perdue, about possibly the benefit of using Pinterest. So I'm considering seeing if there's a way I can do that to get the most out of that. Maybe get some more traffic in late, or who knows what. But not have to invest a lot of time in it. Right now, it's just I have not benefiting from it myself, not using it, but I will later once the site is bigger. I'm sure I will. Yeah.
Does your site utilize ads? Does it have enough traffic to get get into any of the private?
I'm not using it. To the best of my knowledge, from what I heard in podcasts and what I read in articles, I think my impression was I need to wait until I have a lot more traffic. So right now, no, I'm not. I guess that's a nice to have on my list of nice to have, not important.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, no, for sure. I definitely know I definitely know a few people that have started with their sites on Pinterest. So they just have purely
Oh,
Pinterest websites, and then once they get the traffic, because there's a lot of traffic on Pinterest, and that's kind of the beauty of that network, is the fact that it's very similar to Google in the fact that people just search for things and then they actually immediately leave the
okay.
site, and then they go to Pinterest. So people have built their businesses just on Pinterest using advertising income, and then through that that helps them validate, and then they actually go and attack the SEO
Oh, wow.
field. So it's just a slightly different way of doing it,
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty neat, actually. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk productivity.
Okay.
you've got a full-time job, and you're at least dedicating what you mentioned, 20 hours of your time to this. And at this point, you've talked about this 80-20 principle and stuff like that. What
Yeah.
else are you doing? What other things have you done in terms of productivity that has led to the success of
Oh,
your
yeah.
site?
This is really easy to answer. I'm hoping I'm not going to leave any off. There's so many things. Number one is I do make. I think thinking about the subject between last time that we talked and tonight, I think the number one thing was is more of a the number one thing is more of a mentality, productivity oriented mentality, and i.e. priorities. So sometimes I'll feel, just like anybody else, I feel like, you know what, I'd rather blow this off and I'd rather watch a movie or I'd rather do this. But I take the moment where I'm considering doing something for leisure fun or whatever, and I stop and say, is this okay or not versus the rest of my week, what I got done? Yes or no. If it's okay, I'll let myself do that. If not, I'll say, you know what, I got to put that off until some other time. That would be fun, but tonight I need to be working on this. I need to knock this out. The rest of the stuff is just like little things. Driving in a car, that's a fantastic time to make use of this free time and still listen to some stupid, well, I won't say stupid music. Instead of listening to the zany morning talk show like we have here in the United States sometimes, that I put that time to good use, and I'll listen to podcasts. I listen to Dom's Human Proof Designs podcast a lot of times, a couple others by some of the other biggest affiliate marketers who really give out practical, actionable advice. And some of the stuff has been fantastic that I've not heard otherwise, and that's invaluable. It's really hit me a lot because it's helped me gain skills in a short amount of time. If I see them, I signed up to webinars and for feeds where I see if somebody's releasing a new article. There's a new webinar that comes out. If I can't watch it at that moment, I'll go back later and I'll have it saved in my YouTube list, and I can either download it to my phone to watch when I have free time, or watch it some other time. I make sure I keep track of things like that and know that they're happening. So I do that. When I have ideas in my head, I make sure to put them down quickly before they're gone. Because if I don't, you never know. You may lose it forever. You snooze, you lose. I'll either write it down, send it to myself some way, take a picture of something. I can feel, okay, I got this here. What I also noticed was when I do that, if I at least record it somewhere, one way or the other, it tends to actually come back later, and I don't really forget it as often. I know that it's there, but I remember that I did something related to that idea. And then like, this especially happens with keyword ideas. That is so valuable sometimes. I'll take notes of that. I'll save it somewhere, and then I can come back later and put it in the tool and check it out and see where it leads me. Let's see what are some other. I work a lot of hours at a time sometimes, so it's very important to take breaks occasionally. And I remember being in college, and I was really good at pushing myself really too hard sometimes. But I remember I had a teacher, chemistry teacher, who said it's recommended that after, I think he said 1 to 2 hours, I forget, you take at least a 30-minute break. So you're not actually doing less, you're keeping yourself from getting less productive because it's diminishing return sometimes, as they say. You don't want to wear yourself out too soon because your productivity will go down. If you take a break, you can come back refreshed. You can pretty much be back where you were. Keep working well. I think that's the biggest things that come to mind right away. I try not to get near anything that's going to distract me. If it's people, music, something on the internet, sometimes I just gotta say I gotta put this aside. I need to turn this off. Do whatever it is. If it's not super important, I need it. If it's not personal priority, I can put it off until later, and I don't need to be, because if you keep swapping and doing things, it really makes you ineffective at staying focused and getting something accomplished.
Do you start your weeks in a specific way? Do you have any sort of rituals or anything like that?
I generally base that off of what I was able to accomplish or not accomplish by the end of Sunday night. And I've been trying to actually been. That's a good question. I've actually been trying to improve in this area. So I know that some people start the week by planning for the week. I pretty much do that. I do have to learn that I have to be flexible sometimes, but I try to have. Yeah, but it's basically I try to have 1 to 2 what I'll call mid-range goals of things that are reasonable that I'd like to accomplish that week, and maybe some minor goals that I would also like to do. But these are the most important, and I make them the priority. These other little ones, I make a note at the beginning of the week. This is what I would like to accomplish this week also, and try to have those reasonable goals set for the week. And things go well, and I do what I should. They'll get done that week, and we'll have made progress on my side.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it's always nice to. I really enjoy the topic of productivity. I know it's not kind of weird, but it's good when it's good when you can see and pick up small systems from other people and stuff like that. I think Matt Diggity had a he released something on his blog, and it was something about time tracking. So he actually measures every second of time that he dedicates to a specific task. And I started doing that, and I mean, I personally think it's annoying to record it because I have to record it into a spreadsheet. But I've been doing it for at least a year now, and it's very interesting to see where kind of the ROI of your activities and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. Related to that, I forget who was saying it in the podcast just last, was it just like the end of the week before last? And the guy was saying that in the beginning, he set a reminder in his reminder app or calendar app, whatever, for every hour to ask himself, are you focused? To remind himself he needs to stay on track until he got in the better habit of doing that. Before hearing that, I learned that the value of using a reminder app that if there's something either the same day or especially during that week that is important, you'd be incredibly dumb not to use this free app to set a reminder that, hey, I need to do this day. Don't forget. There's no excuse for not doing that, but we take these things for granted because I don't know if it's just American culture. I think it's just more in people by their nature. We tend to think that shouldn't be a big deal to remember to do that later on, but that's not how it works. Unfortunately, you get busy during the week, things get forgotten. So it's extremely important, even if it's something that might seem trivial to other people, set that reminder app or put a post-it note wherever you need to, whatever it takes, and you'll be far better off doing that.
That's hilarious. Also, because I don't know if you remember, but before I got on the call, I have a funny little ringtone that goes off, and that's because it's pretty similar to what your friend does. And so mine is that I have an alarm for 8 a.m., 12 p.m., 5:30, I believe, and 10:30. And I don't know why those numbers I chose, but it helps me remember and keep track of time, because sometimes you'll be doing stuff and it's just very helpful to say, oh, okay, now it's you're basically reassessing and uh, what is the word, keeping yourself accountable to time, because everyone has the same amount of time, and if you're actually keeping track of it better, then I hopefully it's something that helps with productivity and stuff like that.
That's actually a really good idea. I'm gonna start doing that too, because I noticed that I can be doing something, and then later, before I realize it, it's already later in the afternoon. This happens to me a lot. But if I'd had that reminder, I would have been already before then. I would have been on track and been more aware of my time schedule for the day. So thanks. That's actually a really good idea. You know.
Yeah, and I have to switch up the alarms once in a while because it's very, yeah, I've got like
Yeah.
annoying ones, I've got fun ones, I've got funny ones. But let's go on to something else actually. In the Facebook group, in the Human Proof Designs Facebook group, we told some folks that we were going to be interviewing you, and we got some questions. So I think it'd be pretty cool to go through those listener questions.
Sure.
One of them was from Adrian. Adrian is one of your buddies. So
Yep.
he asked, what kind of skills do you think you need to acquire in order to have success in the affiliate marketing space?
I think the most important ones are the basics, the fundamentals, and that's the basic SEO stuff and finding good keywords that you can rank for. You need to you need to understand the basics for that, but then you need to also find additional ways to improve on that and to better judge which posts that you should or should not write and publish. I think that's extremely important because, you know, there when I started off, where my understanding versus where it is now was a lot worse. And there were a lot of posts that unfortunately just never going to do that well because I didn't have the knowledge that I do now. I think that's super important because, again, limited time and resources, you need to spend it on what's going to be the most effective. Also, content writing skills. That's one of the biggest changes that I've made. In the beginning, my writing was pretty bad, and I was guilty of doing what a lot of people do, and that's just trying to insert a bunch of bull crap to get it to like 1,000 words or whatever, fluff, putting fluff in there as we call it. And that was really bad, and you could tell by looking at it. And I'm ashamed of what I used to have. But what happened was when I said, okay, I want to do a better job, what's funny was when I said, I don't just want to write a post, but I want to actually write in a way that the reader will get value out of it. But what's funny is when I did that and made a reasonable effort to, number one, learn about the topic and put some subtopics in there, like in the H2s or whatever, little sections, maybe with a nice diagram in some cases. Before I knew it, number one, I'd already gone way beyond 1,000 words easily. And number two, the quality went way up. And I went back, I had to go redo all my original content because it was such a dramatic difference. So again, your content writing skills and the quality of the content you produce, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just a good writing style, conversational tone, and try to, people aren't really stupid. They usually can tell crap when they see it. So at least make a reasonable effort to deliver something that to answer the question and help them buy something. Those two things, you know. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's probably first, the biggest things that come to mind, you know.
Okay.
Right, to answer that. Yeah.
Roger asked a very interesting question. How much money should someone invest in a site before giving up?
I will say, well, the problem is he's asking just about money, but time is a huge factor too. Because I know it's partly a cliche, but it's also very true in some ways. Time is money. So it's hard to separate those two. I feel like the question is incomplete without the time factor, but I would say don't. It's really hard. I don't know if I'm able to answer that question the way it's phrased. I will say that you shouldn't spend more than, if it's, let's just say use a typical scenario. Let's say it's a pretty young site. You've got X number of posts, some reasonable amount, like a handful of posts. You spent, let's say, $2,000, $2,500 on it. I don't think you should give up, but I think you should not really dump so much money into it as opposed to trying to go about things differently that don't really so much require the money, but how you're trying to grow your site. I don't think that question has an easy answer.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah.
Carl asked Carl asked a question about how many articles a month do you write or do you outsource? And I think that'll be pretty interesting because you mentioned, you know, this whole thing about writing content and all that kind of stuff. So you have to be more cognizant of the content that you're writing. So I'm also curious, how much stuff are you actually putting out there?
At the maximum amount I've gotten, so let's say I average about roughly on a good week with doing it myself. Again, that's super important to remember that I'm doing it myself. So let's say about 2 a week. Let's say 4 to 6 a month. It depends on the type of post plus whatever else I'm working on the site. One reason I'm in this situation is because I've not had good luck with writers, hiring writers, and I've had to redo all of the stuff I got from them, all of it, every time. It was a joke. It was lousy. Even somebody I paid more money than I probably should have to. You know, so much for that. I know that's not the most efficient way. I will say that there's pros and cons to that. It impedes your progress in terms of time, but for longevity and quality and other the benefits that come with higher quality content. Those are the pros. I'm not outsourcing currently, but I will be in the future because there's just no way around that in terms of getting stuff out faster because it's a numbers game. More traffic equals more clicks, equals more buys, equals more money. And so it took me longer doing it this way. I'm very happy with what I have. I'm very proud of it, and I can keep growing it. But if I really want to go scale it big time, I'm going to have to outsource. And then and when I do that, I'll probably have at least twice as many posts per month, at least, I'm sure.
I want to actually dive into your content process. So the content process uh, for you and for other people is it's just different, right? Because the fact is you're actually writing your content, and I don't know if we've talked too much about the whole process of actually writing content yourself,
Yes.
beyond that you said, oh, in a conversational style and stuff like that. Could you actually walk us through A to Z of your approach for writing an article? So from the research to the all the way to the end of uploading it.
Yes. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that if it's a new keyword that I haven't targeted before, in that case, I'll go out and do some reading about it. I'll look at the product, and also one thing that really helps sometimes, if it's one of the popular products by a big company, it's a quality product. I look at the owner's manual, because what's funny is a lot of times a huge chunk of my post is actually the information that came from that. And that made it. It's actually, just not to go off on too much of a tangent, but one of the writers who supposedly is going to do a fantastic job, he never even bothered to do that, and that's the first thing that I did. And what he gave me back was so devoid of any real information versus me just going and reading an owner's manual, and I knocked it out because of that. So I back up. If it's a new topic, I'll read about it and get all the information I feel comfortable being able to write a full post, and also give the product reviews and information if it's a buyer post. If it's just an info post, it's just strictly mostly research, right? If it's related to existing products, I know right away, what I can do is, because of my other posts, I can take some of the subsections, the H2 sections, I can take related information there, and I can potentially repurpose some of that. Because if it applies, why not do that? Why not use some of the work I've already done? And I'll just rewrite it a little bit so it's not duplicate content. But it honestly is related to the post. So that's part of it. Then I'll basically, after I've done the research and reading and I feel comfortable getting started, I have a general pattern or a template format. I know, for example, people can download some of the great example templates from HPD. They're available to download. So I already have I basically have a skeleton frame in my mind of how the post is going to look, depending on what kind it is. So first thing I'll do is set up my little short code for my table of contents, and then I'll do my general content. I break it into sections, and I get to work writing those little areas with the information, and I add images as I go. And when I get to the product section, I'll set those up with my little subtitles, some good images, and I get to work taking the features list for each product that I find, and also the user reviews, buyer reviews. I'll take the information and the features and kind of put them together and write them in the way that expresses the features as benefits, and write in a conversational style as like I'm your friend talking to you, and that I want to help you. That this is a great one. Why? But I don't like this little thing. But I tell you, overall, it's a great toaster because it's a great price, and you're going to love it too. And then I do the pros and cons, and then I go to the call to action when I come to a conclusion. So it's basically write my general content with subsections, the H2s, to keep it nice and organized, easy to read, some good images. And then I go to the product section, maybe my table, best products to table, then my product reviews, and that's generally how it goes. Occasionally, I also add infographics I'll make, and I was making them in Canva. May have to move because they changed, but it's not as good as it was. But I do that sometimes too, add some stuff like that.
How long does that usually take you from research to upload?
Let's say the research takes me 2 to 3 hours, depending on how far I have to go, and writing and upload public, getting done and spell checking and all that, proofreading. Uh, I tend to average between, say, 6 to 8 hours, and sometimes some of them are harder than others. It's I do my own images and diagrams, so that takes time. Although I'm a lot better than I was before and a lot more efficient. Yeah, there's a learning curve for everything, everything.
Do you actually have any?
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No, no, you go ahead.
I
You're
was
the
like,
guest.
it paid off. It paid off, you know.
Do you have any tips for creating good images?
I do. So, you know, what's interesting after having done this for some time, uh, you always, number one, I would try to try, if you can do that, size the images to the native width of the post layout in your theme, so they don't have to be resized. For example, you don't need a 1920 by 1080 image if the post width is only about 800 pixels. That's because WordPress is going to have to do that. It's going to have to be done, and it's some overhead that is completely unnecessary. And not even talking about the file size too, which is another story. That's one of them, just for the basics. Always take advantage of making your file name titles SEO friendly, and also take advantage of the meta description there when you upload them in WordPress. I make it. I forget where I read that, but I'm sure it's been covered in Human Proof Designs too. But the file names, or it'll be like best toaster, or sorry, best toaster for people and people RVs. Hyphens in between the words is easy to read. The keyword is there, plus the little modifiers are in it. And plus I add the text for the meta description, so it's easily determined. The search engine can easily tell what it is. You know, for graphics and diagrams, I use a sorry, I use a free image editor called Paint.net, and I actually found some free plugins to help me actually do even more. So with that thing, I can do everything from remove the backgrounds to product images, to changing a JPEG to a transparent background PNG for a product, especially because I have to do that a lot. I can make basic graphics just by doing basic shapes with basic nice colors. You can make all kinds of crazy pictures, like a little stick man that looks good, and a little picture of a room with your product in it, somebody sleeping at night. I've done that several times. Just basic colors and shapes with that kind of stuff in an editor like that. You can do a lot more than you would think. Don't use the low end stuff like MS Paint, but a decent image editor. So you don't need to spend $100 or $1,000 on something. You know, you should take advantage of for stuff like infographics. Maybe your featured image at the top of a post. You should take advantage of things like Easel and Canva, because it's pretty amazing what you can do for $0 a month. You know, for free. I've done so much stuff there, and just by starting with a good example and then tweaking it to myself. From then on out, all I had to do was copy my existing stuff and modify it, and it works out great. Oh, sorry.
What was that? Was it easel? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I've been trying that out. I have to play with it some more because Canva changed to 2.0 recently, and unfortunately, a lot of free items are now missing. So it's easil.com. Easel is sort of like a painting easel, but I think it must be spelled differently. I forget. Yeah, it's just one I found out about recently. So Paint.net, Canva, and Easel. But also, I'm really glad I tried Google Drawings, because it's like a scaled down version of Microsoft Visio. So it does vector graphics, which the others don't like. Paint.net does raster or pixel based. Vector graphics are super high resolution, and when you scale them, they still maintain the quality. So you can make everything from a great site logo, even with a little back shadow and all kinds of cool stuff in different fonts and colors, to I make a lot of my diagrams in there. And those are actually some of my highest traffic things on my diagrams. Like, how do you connect this? How do you wire this up? That's one of the, based on scroll maps, heat maps, this is one of the first things people go to, is a good diagram to help them understand something visually. So Google Draw is fantastic for stuff like that, for a lot of stuff. You know.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I haven't personally heard of easel, and I think I've tried Google Drawings once, and yeah, I found it just like most Google tools, pretty flexible and free, which is always useful. One thing actually might be useful is that creativemarket.com. So if you go to creativemarket.com, you can get you can just buy little icon packs, and they're not very expensive. It's like $8 or something like that. Or if you want, it's just sometimes you spend $20 and you get thousands of icons. And what you can do is you can take those icons. They're really nice and professional because professional designer made them.
Yeah,
You take those
sure.
and you put them into Canva or anywhere that you can accept an SVG file, and then from there you can actually adjust the colors that they use in
Yeah.
there, and then now you've got a whole customized graphic, and it looks pretty neat there.
That's a great idea. I've had to make a lot of my own clip art because I just couldn't find what I was looking for, and I did that in Paint.net. And if I did it right, I could save it as a high resolution image in PNG, and then I could do exactly what you're saying. It's not as good as a SVG, but it's just one approach.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Why do you create infographics?
Originally, it was just because I heard the idea out there that these are. I thought I heard somewhere one time that supposedly it was nice in Google's eyes, but I'm not sure about that. If that's true. But honestly, the biggest reason is while that I think that I'm sure that is helping because I see my images come up in Google for images for my niche, or both niches. But also it delivers a whole heck of a lot of value to the reader. And immediately, when somebody sees this infographic, that's like smack. Okay, these people know what the hell they're talking about. This looks like a legit place to be. Right away, when somebody says an infographic, that means this person is giving you information in a way that can help you understand. And if they're going to do that, this is probably where you need to be reading, and you'll just hopefully keep going, down the post. So it's trustworthiness and reader value. I'm sure there's more, but as a little side note, it also helps me sometimes organize the main points of the post because I have to think of what's going to go in an infographic. It forces you to be concise with information and think of about like say 4, 5, or 6 ideas at the most. And if I have to put it in that little infographic, which I usually do first for the main ideas, then I think, well, you know what? That's pretty much how this post can go. I'm going to take those ideas and expand on them and explain better. And then by the time I'm done with that, that's most of the content except for the products,
Sorry, did you say that you create the infographic first?
Generally, I do. Sometimes I start it and then I come back and finish it, depending how the post goes, or edit or change it up a little bit. But generally, when I start after I've got my information from researching, I know pretty much what points I want to get across. To answer, if it's about products, I'll have the main information about here's what you should look for when shopping for this. Here's what this does. Here's why this one is good and this one is bad. So I already have a general idea about what I'm going to put in that post. So usually I can make the infographic first, and I'm usually pretty good to go with that. Yeah, I put mine at the top in my case. So that's one reason why. I guess it just kind of comes naturally in that case. Yeah.
That's actually why, I mean, that's why I love talking to different people building different sites, because everyone has their unique strategy. When I asked you that question, whether or not, or sorry, why you build infographics, I was actually I was wondering if that was because of link building opportunities. But from what you're telling me, it's all structurally, it's to help you lay out the rest of the article.
Yeah, that's true. Although what you're saying, I feel like I'm missing out. And that's a great topic. I was actually thinking about this again today. So I am going to look into that too, link building opportunities and driving additional traffic from those, because I think that there's just too much value there to not get squeezed more use out of it. Yeah,
I mean, every time you say something, it always reminds me of something else, and it's just the fact that a lot of this whole conversation is about mindset, right? You said, okay, you were thinking about this building, using infographics for, and other link building opportunities. And initially, we talked about, okay, how much time do you spend on the site? You said 20, but realistically, it's it's way more than that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's hard. Sometimes you don't. If well, you know what? I should have kept track of my time. See there. So, yeah, I'm sure it's probably at least 25 or more. I know some weeks has been. I didn't want to think about how much it's been some weeks. I've been known to use my days off from the job at times to really knock out as much as I could, rather than just lie in bed all day scrolling on my phone or something like that. I'll be in front of the computer working on stuff that I know I should really get on it while I have the chance. So yeah, it's gone way above that sometimes. I'm sure I've done. I, let's just say there have been solid weeks. So, but most of the time it's about probably 20, 25, maybe potentially 30. But I like to use 20 as a rough number so I don't scare people off. I don't want to do that just for make people feel like, oh, that's crazy.
For the people that aren't watching the video and they're only listening to the audio, I can tell you right now that Marty looks like a really happy guy.
I appreciate it. Yeah, try to be positive in it and try to get some enjoyment out of it. It's not all about work, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, you've worked very, very hard to build what you have, and now you have an asset that brings you income every single month.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the end of the story right there. I think I want to be respectful of your time. I know that it's pretty late for you there. I only have one other question. We'll actually have two more questions. The first one.
It's no problem. It's not even 9 o'clock for me yet, so it's cool.
Don't worry. You need to get back building your site. So.
Yes, I do have some work.
Do you have any last tips? Anything that we didn't go over that you'd want to share?
Yeah, you know what I think? I know that a lot of the stuff that we do, whether you're a beginner or intermediate or even the top people, a lot of it's just the nuts and bolts stuff. But what I've learned over the time is a lot of this, we tend to be not understanding about how important the human factor is about, especially ourselves personally, because this is not easy. Going from point A to point B to where you're really finally making some money and saying, okay, this was worth it. What I learned is a lot of times your mentality and your perspective on things are incredibly important, because you're going to have bad moments where you're going to feel like what most people actually do, unfortunately, is a lot of people that say, you know what, I just woke up today, I feel like I don't know why I'm bothering this. I should just quit. Maybe I should just go back and not forget it, remember, not even think about this anymore. Those days, you're going to have those days. It's just going to happen. I learned it. This is how, being a human being, you're going to have hard moments where you feel like giving up, or you're going to feel like you're a failure, or that you're not cut out for it. But I'm here to tell you that just give yourself a moment to let those moments pass and get back on track later whenever you feel like you're back in the game. And don't give up. Just give it a couple hours until the next day, whatever it takes. And so don't give up whatever you do. If something's not working, that's okay. You're going to make mistakes. Just do not give up whatever you do. If you have to start over with a different approach or change something, try something else that might work, do that. Anything is better than giving up, because you're in this for the long haul. You just got to make it to that first goal, and you'll be glad you did. But as far as more on the mentality aspect of things, you need to understand that you're going to have to break out of the traditional way of thinking. And I'm saying that as an American, and our culture is a little bit different than other countries. Everybody has a certain way that they grow up, and people think a certain way depending where you live. And here it's, well, you should be working your 9-to-5 job. You should spend your time on that. You should go hang out with your friends, get drunk on Friday night, and you should do this and you should do that. But the truth is, that's not the right mentality to have if you want to be successful at making money online. You're going to have to think more like an entrepreneur. You're going to have to understand that you're going to have to make hard decisions sometimes and sacrifices, or you might feel like going and hang out with your friends. And a lot of people won't understand your decisions. They just cannot comprehend why you would not want to go party or go on a big trip when you should be writing posts or something like that. You have to make personal decisions at times and have the mentality and say, you know what, I'm more focused on success and my goal than I am these short-term pleasures. you gotta think long term, think like an entrepreneur. Okay, today is really hard, and what I did didn't work, and this doesn't work, but I'm not going to give up. I know that there are always obstacles in the way. I'm going to keep going. I'm thinking long term, always looking to the future. Uh, Also, you need to try to be positive and get rid of negative and toxic things. Sometimes it's like TV, radio. There's a lot of negative stuff out there that we don't realize it, but it subconsciously affects how we think about things, both what we think we can accomplish as well as how we look at things. 'Cause I'm a very different person than I was when I started my first site. It's funny how you grow. The more things you learn in your first experiences, it builds character, but it also builds a different way I look at the world, other people, technical stuff, ideas, especially ideas and opportunities. So I had to get rid of negative things that were affecting me and kind of blinding me from the right mindset of a positive and opportunistic and going after good ideas. I had to push those things out of the way so they can't bother me anymore. And over time, once it, for lack of a better expression, get it out of your system, what you notice is you're a lot more focused than you used to be, and you're just generally a lot more happier, and don't have all these negative things pulling you down and weighing you down and making you feel like life is a drag, but you're more into, you know what, I put my heart into what I'm working on. I don't have all this stuff trying to keep me from being razor focused and accomplishing things, and that makes a huge difference. Keeping distractions, especially the negative ones, away. And unfortunately, sometimes what I learned in life is sometimes there are people, and unfortunately very close to you, that there are people who have the crabs in a bucket mentality, and it's not always very obvious, and it's counterintuitive, but it's true. I've seen it many, many times. I've heard other people say the same thing, but there are going to be people who are, whether they consciously do it or not, who are going to say, you know what, you should build a website. You know what, that's a scam. You're wasting your time. Why you even bother that, man? My brother and my half brother's cousin's uncle's sister-in-law tried that, and she ended up getting killed. Some kind of stupid thing, something ridiculous. People will tell you stuff because they're uncomfortable with major changes, and you're shifting from one way of thinking and living to some radical thing, and you're doing something that millions of people will never even try. So you need to understand that you're going to have to be a different person, and just accept that you're here to learn, to try new things, and accept that not everything's going to work out, but you're going to keep working towards your goal. Just keep growing as a person, learning, look for opportunities. And I promise you, if you take that one day at a time and keep chipping away and get rid of the old way of looking at things and then take advantage of the new way, it gets easier. And before you know it, you'll say, wow, I'm more in tune with affiliate sites and earning money online. And you'd be surprised. I think it makes a huge difference in the quality of your life, is in addition to how well you're going to do. And especially, I try to tell absolute beginners, I try really hard to encourage them, and generally speaking, because I learned when I was really young, very few people were nice to me. I didn't have the best life growing up, but I've never forgotten people who were just a little bit nice to me and give me just a little bitty tiny positive push in the right direction. So now from here on out, I always try to, when I see the opportunity, I'll tell somebody, I'll say, hey, I know this is hard right now, but just hang in there. Okay, that didn't work, and you're saying that this didn't work and you feel like you're not feeling too great. That's all right. Not everything's going to work. Just try again for something else and try it this way. Maybe here's some ideas. Just don't give up. Just remember that you can do this. Nobody who is really successful, they weren't born with some magical secret power. There's average people who actually just went the distance. So there's no reason you can't succeed too. It's just a huge amount of it is just what we allow ourselves to do, and if we're motivated or not. How badly do you want to succeed? And do you have the right mindset that I want to do that and I'm willing to put in the effort? You have to ask yourself these hard questions sometimes.
Awesome.
You should get off my soapbox.
Well, Marty, we've had a lot of interactions just online and stuff like that. But from every interaction, especially now that we've had a couple calls together, honestly, I think you're a stand-up guy, and from from the rest of the HPD team, I just want to say thank you for coming onto the show. We're ecstatic that you are part of the HPD community nonetheless. And well, thank you, and I guess we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.